even though stuff is happening incrementally, things are happening to us. Oh, there's more cameras in the supermarket. There's more cameras in the street. The noise from the ambulances that keep coming up and down the road have increased, but they've increased incrementally so that it's normal. Oh, they're cutting down the trees over there. They're building more houses. Oh, well, we need houses, don't we? Until the countryside is ever shrinking. And farmers are not producing the amount of food that they perhaps ought to, or the type of food that they should, or the supermarkets are providing more and more highly processed foods, or the water it's got stuff in it that's not actually very healthy, but it's normal, isn't it? There's a sort of sense that everything's okay when it's normal, to the point that we really and truly, we don't notice that we are that frog slowly rising in temperature in a water that is getting hotter and hotter, because it's incremental, it's normal. But it isn't really normal. It isn't normal that we're getting the tension happening, that more and more people are dying every day. And they didn't used to do that, but it was after a certain medical intervention that everybody was mandated into having, pretty much, or persuaded. And that sort of sense that if you say something that other people disagree with, oh no, we'll shut you down. That's all normal. And I just kind of started to think, what kind of life is it that we're acquiescing to? What kind of life is it that we're just considering is normal? We are we not, being corralled, if you like, into a world of ever more limitations, ever more asking for permissions, ever more living in this corporate Britain? I attended a course the other day. I was very kindly invited to attend a course with Sovereign Pete. And he was talking about sovereignty, about taking back the responsibility that you are your own court, you are your own law, that actually if you do no harm to others, you don't need half the time so many of these rules. You might have guidelines, or you might agree as a bunch of people trying to live together on certain things, and you say, well, actually, if I do no harm to you and I respect your limits and I respect your abilities, then we could get along quite happily. But do I need to have cameras in the supermarket spying on me? Do I need to have cameras on the gantries on motorways if I happen to go a couple of miles an hour above a certain speed limit? And who sets the speed limit? And how do they know what's good for me? And why is, for example, 20 miles an hour now a perceived thing? And who really is saying that I should abide by a policy of net zero? Why should people come after my wood-burning stove, for example? Oh no, it becomes normal to hate people who are doing something perhaps that is a bit different to what the government and what society wants us to do, because it becomes normal. And it does seem that normalisation of things that we before thought were pretty normal in themselves. We used to think that a mum and a dad and a couple of children was the norm, and yet now we're told, of course, that men can be women and women can be men. People are quite happy to bring up one-parent families, and that's normal. Now, whilst I have no problem with anybody wanting to pretend, if they're a man, that they're a woman and dress up and all of that, or if they want to have no partner and adopt a child and be a one-parent family, I have no qualms with any of that. Of course, I'm happy for people to be happy and to try and fulfill their wishes and their needs. Why wouldn't I be? But I wouldn't say that was normal. I mean, history, tradition and custom shows us that that isn't normal, but it does seem that normal is being changed, the new normal. You know, after that pandemic, we were told there's going to be a new normal. Well, who's changing the normal? Who's setting the agenda? Who's saying that we have to have this new normal? Who, effectively, is turning up the gas on that frog incrementally so that the frog inside realises it's normal? We all live in a system, at the moment. And the system, in my opinion, is a bad system. It's not a system that seems to be working for people, for humans. It seems somehow or other we've devised a system, or we've acquiesced to a system that seems controlling and enslaving. I'll tell you what I mean. You see, right from birth, we register ourselves into a corporate world, this corporate Britain that I refer to quite a lot. But it's across the world. These corporations that are running the world now somehow, in my opinion, this has got out of control. The corporations are running everything, and they seem anti-human. We have governments that are corporations, that they now dictate in the guise of democracy, in the guise of a free state here in the West. But it seems to me that although people vote for a bunch of people who are supposed to be administrating the government and making life easier for people, in fact, they're making life more restrictive and putting people into a very narrow band of how they can live their lives. And as well as that, they're charging extortionate amounts of money or having influence on other corporations that charge extortionate amounts of money, so that just to stand still, just to live, you've got to work extra hard and earn this fiat currency, this debt-based currency that depreciates all the time, in order just to be able to stand in a meadow and look at the sunset and the flowers around you and relax. We see this, and I think when you see the animals, the hares and the bunnies gambling in the fields, the foxes and the badgers, the deers and the wild animals, none of them pay. None of them pay just to exist. Why is it humans, that people have made a system that seems to put them in ever more tinier boxes in which a small number of people get to govern a larger number of people and tell them what to do, how to think, what they can say, what they can put online, how they are supposed to react, where they can park, how much their house is worth, how much they have to pay for the council, how much the fuel duty is on petrol they put in their car. And yet the people, the majority of these people, just acquiesce, bow down and say, yes, no, no, no. We love being slaves. We love being told what to do. We love the fact that you guide us and rule over us. And we somehow have this veneer that we're free. And we're in this system in which blatantly, can you not see that we are not free? We're not free to say what we like. We're not free just to put a roof over our head and not be expected to pay something. That if we drive down the road and inadvertently go a little bit faster in an area that perhaps has been guided to us or told, dictated that it's got to be a certain speed limit, and a camera clocks us in the middle of the night and now we have to pay a fine. This is so anti-human. I'm not saying that we shouldn't live with some guidance that we all obey or agree to. Guidance that driving, for example, on the left-hand side of the road, if everyone does that, then at least when you're driving on the road, you're not going to go and make a head-on collision with somebody coming the other way. Guidance that perhaps in this area it's a good idea to slow down a bit, but does it have to be so extremely penal that we need signs telling us absolutely the top limit that you need to drive, and if you go a couple of miles an hour over that, you are going to be fined and then go to naughty school or possibly have your license removed? I mean, what system is this? It's so anti-human. This is a system that has built up and crept up over decades, centuries, in which we find ourselves ever more in this maze like a rat, desperately trying to work out what it is we are actually allowed to do. And yet all these fines, all these misdemeanors, all these so-called rapping our knuckles for doing something wrong has been set by other people. And it's all been set to supposedly make our lives better. But it isn't better. It isn't better. As I say, it's anti-human. And the reason it's anti-human is because it's set up by dead entities that are not human. Corporations. The office of the Prime Minister is a corporation. The government is a corporation. The councils are corporations. They exist on a piece of paper in a filing cabinet somewhere. They exist as a piece of data on a computer. They're registered on places like Dun and Bradstreet so that you can see how much and financial system it is about. It isn't actually a body of people doing good work for other people. These corporations, this system, employs living men and women, employs people to operate for the dead entity, this piece of paper. It isn't real, it doesn't breathe, but some of these employees are working the system, the 1%, work these corporations to their advantage, and the other 99% are the ones who are being taxed or being penalised for driving the car in the wrong place at the wrong time, or parking in the wrong place, or a little bit delayed in paying certain bills. And the whole acts and statutes and the legislation and the court system is there. Again, all for profit corporations that are there to penalise the humans, the people, the men and women who live on this planet or in this country. And it's a system that we have said, oh, okay, we'll just go along with, because we haven't got the balls to stand up and say, actually, do you know what? I don't want to live in this system, thank you very much, in which when I have a roof over my head and I buy a house, you automatically just send me a bill and you call it a council tax, and you say that what this bill is for is to help pay for the municipal services in the town I live. And you don't tell me that this money is actually going to a different pot at central government and is actually being used to fund terrorism or war or the killing of innocent people in different countries. You don't tell me that. And you also don't tell me that there is legislation that says actually it is illegal to fund anybody who is funding war or terrorism. So actually it makes the paying of the council tax something that is against the law, and you could in fact go to court for funding somebody, a body, a corporate body that goes to war and is providing terrorism, which would be the government. I mean, it's a nonsense. This is a system that is running against us and not for us. And more I cannot understand why myself and the others just acquiesce and say, no, it's fine. We don't mind if a government who's voted in, apparently, freely by the people, will change their promises, will mandate certain medical interventions which have not been properly and thoroughly tested for, say, 5 to 10 years to see what the results are. And if the results aren't very good and people are harmed or they're dying by it, this same government will not even respond to that, will not talk about it, will not now, with the online safety bill, allow other people to talk about it or question it. And so the system turns in to George Orwell's 1984 Big Brother system, and people just acquiesce. It seems people are completely and utterly blind. Now, there are some people who are saying, I want out of this system. I don't want to be part of this. I don't have to be part of this. This is a construct that some people have made that other people think have to be lived in. And of course, it's true. We don't have to live in this system. We are, in fact, free people, if only we would recognize the fact that this is a system that we do not have to acquiesce to, we don't have to agree to it, and we can get out of it. If only we understood that we are not slaves, we consent to the slavery by acquiescing, by agreeing to it, by being contracted, agreeing to the contract that we are part of it. And there are ways to get out of the system. There's what I would call the I'm all right, Jack system, in which some people can manage with clever thinking and understanding that if you write lots of letters, paperwork about the legal fiction, claim your executorship to a trust that's been set up in your name, you can in fact get out of the system. And I'll explore that. The reason I call that the I'm all right, Jack system is because it is in many ways, it's an individual, somewhat selfish system. Of course, if everybody did it, it would be advantageous, but it takes a huge a leap of faith to get out of that. For me, it seems much more easier for people to completely understand that they just want to walk away and not be part of any of this man-made system with its acts and statutes and all of that nonsense, and just simply agree to self-rule, if you like. I mean, the land on this planet, we know the Crown, in theory, own the land in Britain. And you say to yourself, well, who gave it to them? Did God give it to them? And where's the proof of that? Who gave them permission to own the land? Oh yes, they took it by brute force, by menaces and threats, and kept people down. That's not proper, real, genuine ownership. Nobody owns the land. Nobody owns these things that they're extracting the money from you. Of course they don't. And if people start to wake up and realize that actually that we as individuals, as sovereign people, have the divine right to live freely without tyranny, without government telling us how we should live, but that we may, as people, gather together and decide the rules and guidance that we could try as best we can without too much punitive tyranny on top of, to abide by. If we can agree to certain parameters, we could remain free. And so that if there is a misdemeanor, or if there is a genuine crime in which somebody is harmed, that there is actually a victim, not somebody parked somewhere for a few moments and it went over the time, or you drove a couple of miles an hour over a certain speed limit and that's just a means to extract money from you. No, but there's actually a real victim who's been hurt, whether that's mentally or physically, or they have had, somebody's parked over their driveway so they can't get out and go to work. That would, in my book, would be a harm, perhaps a stupid something by somebody else, by not thinking and doing an error. That's fine. But it needs, the claimant can say, well, look, I have been harmed by that because I couldn't get to work because I couldn't get the blooming car out of my drive, thanks to somebody not thinking. That, to me, is a reason to then have a claim. And that claim, yes, would go to a court, but not one of these private bar guild courts which is there to extract money from us and make out that the jurisdiction is against you, but a court of your peers, a court in which you assemble, say 12 just men and women of your peers, and the judge, such as he is really just a convener to convene those people together, but the jury, those 12 people, would listen to the claimant, they would listen to the defence, they would talk amongst themselves and come to a decision, not only whether the person parking over the drive or whatever the problem was, whatever the claimant's problem was, and they would come up with a remedy for that, not just whether the person was thought badly and parked stupidly or actually hurt someone or caused an offence or whatever it might be, or whether the guidelines, the rule, or you could say the law, is an ass. Maybe the law needs a bit of tightening up or relaxing, so that those people would be judge and jury, not the judge, the jury would be judging and coming up with the solution. 12 people of your peers. To me, that seems a lot more a fairer system. They've taken an oath to do their duty. One oath, not two, not a secret oath to the bar guild, to the Roman courts, to a tyrannical system. No, no, all of that goes. To me, in order to get this country in which we can have freedom, genuine 100% freedom, we must get rid of the tyranny of this rule, this legislative, this acts and statutes, this government, this crumbling government of tyranny and dictatorship. There are more of us, and we simply have to turn around and say, enough. That system is fraudulent, it's corrupt, and it's dead in the water. It's dead because it's a corporation. It's not really for the benefit of humans. It's anti-humans. It's time it went. And that collectively, that we unite, we set up our own alternative governments. We'd set up our own administrative, whether that be shadow councils, and we work on our own system and we turn our backs and we make those other systems absolutely irrelevant. And the more of us that do this, the more of us that perhaps take our money out of the banks and we put them into better things like gold and silver, that we get out of the debt currency. We tell them we don't care about having permission to do everything all the time, permission to drive your car, permission to park it in a certain place on the road, permission to use a note to buy things all the time, permission. We are free, sovereign people. Let's change that system. Let's get rid of that old system and let's embark on a new sovereign Britain where we are free and are not under the thumb of this tyrannical, dictating, corporate, permission-based system that's penalising us all the time. I started off, as you may remember, looking at, as I was waking up to what was going on and all the policies that the tyrannical and dictatorial government, I keep being corrected on how I say that word, the dictatorial government is pushing down on us, that none of us have actually asked for or wanted, or the way the councils are pushing out, again, things from up on high and not from the local environments. So people who are having giant plant pots, for example, shoved in the middle of their roads, or surveillance cameras, or just other measures that doesn't seem to be very helpful. And of course we know about the 15-minute cities, the low traffic neighbourhoods, and all these sort of nefarious things which are being thrust through as part of the green agenda, net zero, the idea to reduce carbon. And of course, carbon is one of the things that we really, really and truly don't want to reduce because it will affect us. We're at something like 400 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere. And if we go down to something like 200 parts per million, then we won't really be here anymore because plants will start to die. One of the things that I've been spending time doing away from screens is planning what I want to do with my life and the things where I want to go. I've been reading a lot of old books. Here's just a sample of them. Old books that show me the way of old life, the rural life. I'm particularly interested in the old rural life, farming, the communities that we used to have back then, the villages and those sort of things. And there's many books, just to give you an example, one of my viewers recommended books by Adrian Bell, Corduroy, a lovely book, one of his first books, in which it talks about a young man joining a farm in the 1930s and what it was like back in the day, just as motor cars were coming in, just before the advent of tractors, how it used to be done. Men and women on the farm, the rural area was full of life and it was important. People knew the names of trees and plants and grasses. They knew how to get the best out of the land. We've forgotten all of that. We don't care about it, and we're so away from nature at the moment in these cities with the LED lighting and the surveillance cameras and the concrete and the tarmac and the glass and the steel that we've forgotten actually that we are creatures of nature. Another one that I've enjoyed some time is this one here, Vanishing England by P.H. Ditchfield and Fred Rowe, who went round in the 1920s drawing and reporting on the villages and the changes back then and warning people that things were going bad because so much of old England was disappearing. And now, 100 years on, we can see by how much these mean new builds on farmland that have whipped away the future of potential farming for people. Land that had been for generations people had farmed. I had it myself, and when I was a young man, I was brought up on the edge of a farm. And I watched the farmer and I watched him go out of business, and I used to play and pick up the stems of clay pipes and occasionally the bowls with intricate designs on them, that for generation after generation men and women were working on the land, men and horses ploughing the fields and getting crops. And now these mean, horrible concentration camps of new builds, the 15-minute cities of the future, all there bar the razor wire, has taken away future people's ability to farm for themselves. It's very sad. More stuff, Village Life, for example, by Norman Weimer, again of that sort of 100 years ago, talking about the various crafts of how men before machines took over and took away the dignity and the skill that man had with his hands and his brain, the ability of this amazing body that we have to create and do things. I'm not saying that life wasn't hard and was more difficult, of course. I'm not saying that, and we have very cushy, easy, convenient lives here. But there's something in the past that we have thrown away. Pride, a sense of place, a sense of purpose, a sense of community, laughter, making our own entertainment, being one with one another and looking after each other. We've thrown away in this modern world so much that has been dear to us. And of course, another one here, George Ewart Evans, again, writing in the 60s, looking back to the 30s, the 20s and 30s, and looking at things like the old windmills and various things, the farm and the village. And he wrote numerous books. And these, I think, to me, are a warning of life that we had that was integral, had meaning, had purpose, was visceral to many people. People were there on the landscape. They were with their animals. They were with the plants. Everybody in these old villages and towns, they had some connection. They helped. They grew stuff. We've lost so much in this modern way. We've given it away to the governments. We've given it away to the corporations. We've said goodbye to intelligent people who could do things with their hands. We now go to these big manufacturers and we think that we are living a life of luxury and purpose with these phones that hypnotize us and are dumbing us down and dulling us. Our kids are being indoctrinated and taught to be sexual creatures. We've done some very bad things in the last 100 years. The biggest is that we've let go. We've let go of our responsibilities and we've let go of our community and our sense of purpose and pride. And I think it's time that we look back and say, what did we throw away in the bathwater of times gone past? I'm not suggesting that we all have to pick up the scythe and the pitchfork and go back and do manual back-breaking work. But I am suggesting that there was a lot of stuff that we have had in the past that was integral to life. And now we are on that precipice, whatever it is, the brink, the brink of a life in which the digital world is pulling us in to this transhumanism, this non-human status. We were human 100 years ago. We laughed, we cried, we worked, we were pride, we had pride, we had something. Of course, life goes on and we need to progress, but we've thrown so much away, and now it's time to revigor that.